Steve Harvey teared up when a single black mother broke down. What he did next left all silent. In a room full of strangers, one woman's raw honesty shattered the silence and touched the heart of a man known for making others laugh. But this wasn't just another emotional moment. It was a turning point. A moment where vulnerability became strength. And a single voice sparked a wave of compassion that transformed an entire audience. If you've ever felt invisible or alone in your struggles, this story will remind you that you're not. Stay with us as we uncover how one courageous confession led to an unexpected act of kindness that left everyone breathless. The auditorium was electric. Thousands of people filled the seats, their energy palpable, their excitement almost tangible. The stage lights gleamed, casting a golden glow across the room. And there, commanding the stage with his signature charm and infectious energy, stood Steve Harvey, a man beloved by millions, known for his quick wit, his wisdom, and his ability to make anyone feel seen. The crowd roared with laughter as he cracked jokes, shared stories, and connected with audience members. It was the kind of night people dreamed about, filled with joy, inspiration, and hope. But among all those smiling faces, in the front row, sat a woman whose smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Her name was Tasha. She wore a modest dress, her hair neatly done, but her shoulders carried an invisible weight that no amount of makeup could hide. While everyone around her laughed and clapped, Tasha sat quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She was a single black mother of two, a woman who had fought tooth and nail every single day just to keep her family afloat. Tasha's journey to this moment had been anything but easy. For the past 7 years, she had been raising her 2 children, Marcus, who was 11, and little Zara, just 7 years old, without their father by her side. He had walked out when Zara was only a newborn, leaving Tasha to navigate the complexities of motherhood, financial instability, and the constant pressure of society's judgment all on her own. Every morning, she woke up before dawn to work her first job at a local hospital, where she cleaned patient rooms and corridors for minimum wage. The work was exhausting, both physically and emotionally. She witnessed suffering, loss, and pain every single day. But she pushed through because her children needed her. After her shift ended at 2 in the afternoon, she would rush to pick up Marcus from school, then head to her second job, working the evening shift at a retail store downtown. By the time she got home, it was often past 9 o'clock at night. She would help the children with their homework, tuck them into bed, and then collapse onto her own bed, only to wake up and do it all over again. The financial strain was relentless. Rent consumed half of her income. Utilities, groceries, school supplies, and unexpected expenses ate up the rest. There were nights when Tasha would sit in the dark, staring at bills she couldn't pay, wondering how she was going to make it through the next week. She had learned to stretch every dollar, to shop at discount stores, to say no to her children more times than she could count. But it wasn't just the financial burden that weighed on her. It was the emotional toll, the guilt, the constant gnawing feeling that she wasn't doing enough, that she was somehow failing her children despite giving everything she had. When Marcus came home with a permission slip for a school field trip that cost $50, Tasha's heart broke. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to give her son the experiences his peers had. But the money simply wasn't there. She had to tell him no, and she watched as his face fell, as he tried to hide his disappointment. That moment haunted her. And then there was Zara, her sweet, innocent little girl who sometimes asked, "Mommy, why can't we go to the movies like my friend's family?" Or, Why don't I have new shoes like the other kids at school? These questions, though innocent, cut Tasha like a knife. She didn't want her children to feel less than. She didn't want them to carry the shame of poverty, to feel the weight of their circumstances the way she did. The isolation was perhaps the hardest part. Tasha had few friends. Most of her old friends had moved on with their lives. They had stable jobs, supportive partners, the luxury of time and money. They didn't understand what it was like to work 2 jobs and still struggle to make ends meet. So Tasha kept to herself. She smiled when she needed to, played the role of the strong, independent woman, but inside, she was drowning. As the evening progressed, Tasha felt something building inside her, a pressure that had been mounting for years. Every sleepless night, every bill she couldn't pay, every time she had to tell her children, "Not today," when they asked for something she couldn't afford, it all came crashing down on her in that moment. The weight of 7 years of struggle, of sacrifice, of silent suffering, pressed down on her chest like a physical force. She had come to this event on a whim. A co-worker had given her a free ticket, saying she deserved a night off, a chance to relax and be inspired. Tasha had almost said no. She couldn't afford a babysitter, so she had asked her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to watch the kids. Mrs. Chen had insisted, saying Tasha needed this. So here she was, in this grand auditorium, surrounded by thousands of people, trying to forget about her problems for just one night. But sitting there, watching Steve connect with person after person, something stirred within her. A voice whispered, "What if I shared my story? What if I told the truth?" The idea terrified her, but it also excited her. What if someone listened? What if someone understood? What if, for once, she didn't have to carry this burden alone? But fear gripped her. What if no one cared? What if her struggles seemed insignificant compared to everyone else's? What if speaking up made her feel even more alone? What if people judged her for being a single mother, for struggling, for not having it all figured out? These doubts swirled in her mind, creating a storm of anxiety and self-doubt. Tasha looked around the auditorium at all the smiling faces. These people seemed to have their lives together. They had come here to be entertained, to escape their problems for a few hours. They didn't want to hear about her struggles. They wanted to laugh, to feel good, to forget about the darkness in the world. Who was she to burden them with her pain? Then it happened. Steve's eyes scanned the audience, and they locked directly on Tasha's. He smiled and pointed toward her. "You," he said warmly. "Yes, you in the front row. Come on up here." Tasha's heart stopped. Her palms began to sweat. Her mouth went dry. This was it. The moment she had been both dreading and secretly hoping for. As she stood up on shaky legs and made her way toward the stage, the entire room fell silent, waiting to see what would unfold. Every eye was on her. Every camera was pointed in her direction. The weight of thousands of gazes pressed down on her, and for a moment, she wanted to turn around and run back to her seat. But she didn't. She kept walking. With each step toward the stage, she felt something shifting inside her. Fear was still there, but so was something else, a quiet determination, a small voice that said, "Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to stop hiding. Maybe it's time to let someone see you." As Tasha approached the microphone, her voice trembling and her heart pounding, Steve had no idea what was about to pour out of her. A confession so raw, so honest, that it would shake him to his core and transform this night into something neither of them would ever forget. Tasha stood at the microphone, the bright stage lights blinding her for a moment. She squinted, trying to adjust to the sudden brightness, trying to find Steve in the sea of light. Her hands trembled as she gripped the microphone stand, her knuckles turning white from the pressure. Behind her, the massive screen displayed her face to thousands of people in the auditorium and millions more watching online. There was no hiding now. There was nowhere to run. Steve approached her with that warm, welcoming smile of his. He extended his hand, and Tasha shook it, her grip weak and uncertain. Up close, he was taller than she expected, more imposing. But his eyes were kind, and that gave her a small measure of courage. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Steve asked, his voice gentle and genuine. "Tasha," she whispered into the microphone, her voice barely audible. "Tasha," Steve repeated, nodding thoughtfully. "That's a beautiful name. Tell me, Tasha, what brings you here tonight? What made you come to this event?" Tasha opened her mouth to give the standard answer, the one she had rehearsed in her mind. Something light, something safe. But as she looked into Steve's eyes, she saw something there. Not judgment, not pity, just genuine human connection. And something inside her broke. The words started pouring out of her like a dam that had finally given way. She told him about her 2 children. She told him about working 2 jobs. She told him about the nights she cried herself to sleep, wondering if she was doing enough, if she was being the mother her children deserved. She told him about the guilt that consumed her, the shame she felt for not being able to provide more, for not being able to give her children the normal childhood they deserved. Her voice cracked as she spoke about Marcus. She described how intelligent he was, how he had gotten straight A's despite everything, despite the chaos and instability at home. She told Steve about the day Marcus came home and said, "Mommy, I want to be a doctor. I want to help people like you help people at the hospital." Tasha's eyes filled with tears as she recounted that moment. Her son had dreams, big, beautiful dreams, and she wanted nothing more than to help him achieve them. But what if she couldn't? What if her financial limitations became his limitations? Then she spoke about Zara. Her voice softened as she described her youngest child, how Zara was the light of her life, how she still believed in magic and fairy tales, how she drew pictures of their family and always made sure to include Mommy, even when Mommy was too tired to play. Tasha choked back a sob as she admitted something she had never told anyone. Sometimes, when Zara was asleep, she would go into her daughter's room and just watch her, wondering what kind of life Zara would have, what kind of woman she would become. Steve listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each word. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to lighten the mood with a joke. He simply listened, and that act of listening seemed to give Tasha permission to continue. She talked about the loneliness, how she had isolated herself from friends and family because she was too embarrassed to admit how much she was struggling. How she pretended everything was fine when people asked how she was doing. How she had become an expert at wearing a mask, at playing the role of the strong, independent woman who had it all figured out. But the mask was slipping. The exhaustion was catching up with her. Just last week, she had fallen asleep while driving home from her second job. She had only woken up because a car horn blared, jolting her back to consciousness just as she was drifting into the other lane. That moment had terrified her. What if she hadn't woken up? What if she had crashed? What would happen to her children? Tasha's voice grew stronger as she spoke about her fears. She was afraid of failing her children. She was afraid of not being enough. She was afraid that one day they would resent her for the poverty they grew up in, for the sacrifices they had to make, for the childhood they didn't have. She was afraid that her love, as much as she gave it, wouldn't be enough to shield them from the harsh realities of the world. But underneath all that fear, she said, there was also something else. Hope. A fragile, flickering hope that somehow, some way, things would get better. That her hard work would pay off. That her children would grow up to be strong, resilient, compassionate human beings who understood the value of struggle and perseverance. That one day, she would be able to look back on these difficult years and know that she had done her best, that it had been enough. As Tasha spoke these final words, tears streamed down her face. She wasn't just crying. She was releasing years of pent-up emotion, years of silent suffering, years of carrying a burden that was never meant to be carried alone. The auditorium had gone completely silent. Not a single person moved. Not a single phone was out recording. Everyone was completely present, completely absorbed in Tasha's story. And then, something extraordinary happened. Steve's eyes, too, began to glisten with tears. This man, known for his humor and his ability to keep things light, was visibly moved. He reached over and gently took Tasha's hand, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Tasha," he said, "do you know what I see when I look at you?" Tasha shook her head, unable to speak. "I see a warrior," Steve continued, his voice growing stronger. "I see a woman who has been fighting a battle that most people will never understand. I see a mother who loves her children so much that she's willing to sacrifice everything for them. And I see someone who deserves to know that her struggle matters, that she matters." The auditorium erupted. People stood up, clapping, crying, cheering. But Tasha didn't hear them. She was too focused on Steve's words, on the validation she had been desperately seeking for so long. What happened next would change her life forever. Steve held Tasha's hand firmly, his grip warm and reassuring. The applause continued to thunder through the auditorium, but Steve raised his other hand, signaling for quiet. Slowly, the noise subsided, and the audience settled back into their seats, eager to hear what would come next. "Tasha," Steve said, his voice carrying the weight of genuine concern, "I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer me honestly. When was the last time someone told you that you were doing a good job? When was the last time someone acknowledged your sacrifice?" Tasha opened her mouth and then closed it. She thought hard, searching through her memories for a moment when someone had truly seen her, truly recognized her efforts. Seconds passed, then more seconds. Finally, tears began to flow again as she realized the answer. She couldn't remember. "That's what I thought," Steve said softly. "And that's exactly why I stopped you tonight. Because sometimes the people who need to hear it most are the ones who never ask for it. They just keep pushing, keep fighting, keep showing up day after day." He turned to face the audience, still holding Tasha's hand. "How many of you out there are struggling? How many of you are working jobs you hate to support people you love? How many of you feel like you're not enough?" Hundreds of hands shot up. Then thousands. The entire auditorium seemed to be filled with people raising their hands, acknowledging their own struggles, their own pain. Steve looked back at Tasha. "You see? You're not alone. You never were. And that's the message I want you to take home tonight." But then Steve did something unexpected. He pulled out his phone and made a call right there on stage. "Hey, it's Steve," he said into the phone. "I need you to do me a favor. I'm going to send you someone's information, and I need you to reach out to her. Her name is Tasha, And she's got two incredible kids, Marcus and Zara. I want you to see what we can do to help her get back on her feet." Tasha's eyes widened. "What? No, I can't," she stammered. "You can, and you will," Steve said firmly but kindly. "Because that's what we do. We lift each other up. We don't let people suffer alone." Over the next few minutes, Steve introduced Tasha to several people backstage: a financial advisor, a career counselor, and representatives from various nonprofit organizations dedicated to helping single mothers. They exchanged contact information, and each one promised to follow up with her within the week. But the most significant moment came when Steve pulled Tasha aside, away from the cameras and the crowds. In that quiet moment, just the two of them, he said something that would echo in Tasha's mind for years to come. "I grew up poor too, Tasha," he said. "My father was a coal miner. We didn't have much. But my parents taught me something that I want to pass on to you. Your circumstances don't define your destiny. You're not poor because you're lazy or because you don't deserve better. You're struggling because the system is broken and because you've been dealt a difficult hand. But that doesn't mean you can't win." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your children are going to look back on these years, and they're not going to remember the things you couldn't buy them. They're going to remember the woman who loved them so fiercely that she worked herself to exhaustion to keep a roof over their heads. They're going to remember a mother who never gave up. That's the legacy you're building, Tasha. That's what matters." Tasha couldn't hold back anymore. She hugged Steve, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to truly break down, not in shame or despair, but in relief. Someone had seen her. Someone had heard her. Someone had validated her struggle and promised to help. When she finally left the auditorium that night, everything felt different. The weight on her shoulders hadn't disappeared entirely, but it felt lighter somehow, more manageable. For the first time in a long time, Tasha allowed herself to believe that things might actually get better. Over the next few weeks, she followed up with each of the people Steve had introduced her to. The financial advisor helped her consolidate her debts and create a realistic budget. The career counselor helped her update her resume and apply for better-paying jobs. And the nonprofit organizations connected her with resources she didn't even know existed: subsidized childcare, educational programs for her children, and even a small emergency fund to help with unexpected expenses. 3 months later, Tasha landed a job as a medical office manager at a prestigious hospital. It paid significantly more than her 2 previous jobs combined, and it offered benefits she had only dreamed about: health insurance, a 401k, and even paid time off. She was able to quit her evening retail job and spend more time with her children. Marcus continued to excel in school, and with the help of a scholarship program that the nonprofit had connected him with, he was able to attend a prestigious summer camp for aspiring doctors. Zara started taking piano lessons, something she had always wanted to do, but Tasha could never afford. But perhaps the most significant change was internal. Tasha began to see herself differently. She was no longer just a struggling single mother, barely surviving from day to day. She was a woman with potential, with value, with a future. The shame that had weighed on her for so long began to lift, replaced by a quiet sense of pride in how far she had come and how far she was going to go. And it all started with one moment. One moment when someone saw her. One moment when someone chose to listen. One moment when someone said, "You matter." That moment changed everything. As the weeks turned into months, Tasha settled into her new job with a renewed sense of purpose. Every morning, she woke up with a sense of excitement rather than dread. The early mornings were still challenging, but now they were filled with hope. She would drop Marcus and Zara off at school and head to the hospital, where her days were filled with responsibilities that made her feel valued and important. The office was bustling, a hive of activity that mirrored the energy of the hospital itself. Tasha quickly adapted to her role, managing schedules, coordinating with doctors and nurses, and ensuring that everything ran smoothly. She felt a sense of pride every time she walked into the office, realizing that her hard work had finally paid off. One afternoon, while she was organizing files, her supervisor, Dr. Ramirez, called her into her office. Tasha's heart raced as she entered, unsure of what to expect. Dr. Ramirez was a respected figure in the hospital, known for her expertise and no-nonsense approach. Tasha had admired her from afar, and the thought of receiving feedback made her both anxious and excited. "Tasha, I wanted to take a moment to recognize the great work you've been doing," Dr. Ramirez began, her tone warm but professional. "Your organization has made a noticeable difference in our department's efficiency. I appreciate your dedication, especially considering how quickly you've adapted to this role." Tasha's heart swelled with pride. "Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. I'm just trying to do my best." "Well, your best is impressive," Dr. Ramirez continued. "I wanted to ask if you'd be interested in taking on more responsibilities. We're looking for someone to help with patient outreach programs, and I think you'd be perfect for it. It would involve working with patients who have difficulty navigating their healthcare options and ensuring they receive the support they need." Tasha's eyes widened. The opportunity sounded incredible, but it also felt daunting. "I'd love to, but I'm not sure I have the experience needed for something like that." "Experience can be learned," Dr. Ramirez replied. "What's important is your compassion and understanding of what people go through. You've lived it, and that makes you uniquely qualified to help others. Plus, I'll be here to support you every step of the way." Tasha felt a surge of confidence. This was more than just a job. It was a chance to make a real difference in people's lives, just as Steve had made a difference in hers. With a deep breath, she nodded. "Yes, I'd like to do it." As she stepped out of Dr. Ramirez's office, a sense of exhilaration washed over her. This was a new beginning, a chance not only to advance her career, but to give back to the community that had once felt so isolating. She thought about the families she would help and the struggles they faced. She remembered her own journey and how far she had come. In the following weeks, Tasha immersed herself in her new role. She reached out to patients, listening to their stories and helping them navigate the complexities of the healthcare system. Many of them were like her, single parents, low-income families, or individuals facing unexpected health challenges. Each story resonated with her, reminding her of her own struggles and the importance of empathy. One day, she met a woman named Angela, a single mother of 3 who had just received a cancer diagnosis. Angela was terrified and overwhelmed, unsure of how to manage her health while also caring for her children. Tasha listened intently as Angela poured out her fears, resonating with her pain. "I don't know how I'm going to do this," Angela said, her voice trembling. "I can barely pay the bills as it is. How will I afford treatment?" Tasha reached across the table, placing her hand on Angela's. "You're not alone in this. We'll find a way to get you the support you need. There are resources available, and I'm here to help you navigate them." As they talked, Tasha felt a familiar warmth in her heart, a sense of purpose that reminded her of the moment she had stood on that stage with Steve. She was in a position to help someone, just as someone had helped her. She felt the weight of her own struggles transform into strength, a strength that could uplift others. Months passed, and Tasha continued to thrive in her role. She organized workshops and support groups for patients, bringing together individuals who had faced similar challenges. The community that once felt isolating began to feel like a family. She forged friendships with coworkers who shared her passion for helping others, and together they created a network of support that extended far beyond the hospital walls. But Tasha's journey wasn't just about work. At home, she made it a point to spend quality time with Marcus and Zara. They had a weekly game night, where they would play board games and enjoy each other's company, laughing and creating memories. Tasha loved seeing her children thrive. Marcus was excelling in school, and Zara had taken to her piano lessons with enthusiasm, practicing diligently every day. One evening, as Tasha was preparing dinner, she heard the unmistakable sound of piano music drifting from the living room. She peeked in to find Zara immersed in her practice, her little fingers dancing across the keys. Tasha smiled, leaning against the doorframe, soaking in the moment. She felt a surge of gratitude for how far they had come, a stark contrast to the days when she had worried about how to make ends meet. Later that week, Tasha received an unexpected call from Steve Harvey's team. They wanted her to share her story on his show as part of a segment on resilience and overcoming adversity. Tasha felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Could she really do it? Could she share her journey in front of a live audience again? After some encouragement from her friends and family, she agreed. When the day arrived, she felt the familiar rush of emotions as she stood backstage, preparing to step into the spotlight. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the strength she had found within. This was her chance to inspire others, to show them that they too could rise above their struggles. As she walked onto the stage, the applause washed over her like a wave. She spotted Steve in the audience, giving her a thumbs up, and that simple gesture filled her with confidence. She shared her story, her struggles, her triumphs, and the importance of community support. The audience listened intently, many with tears in their eyes, and she felt the weight of her journey transform into a powerful message of hope. When she finished, the applause was deafening. Steve embraced her warmly, saying, "You are a true inspiration, Tasha. Thank you for sharing your story and reminding us all of the power of resilience." As she left the stage, Tasha felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. She had turned her pain into purpose, her struggles into strength. She was no longer just a woman carrying the weight of her past. She was a beacon of hope for others navigating their own journeys. And as she returned home to her children, she realized that life was not just about overcoming obstacles. It was about embracing the beauty of new beginnings.